So we can officially say it's not a fluke that Gen Z is the first generation in many years to be probably more religious than their parents. Here's an interesting article this week in the Financial Times. I don't know why the Financial Times is covering this exactly, but here's the headline. Finding Their Religion, Why Gen Z Are Turning to Faith. So there's been a series of articles in different publications about this phenomenon, but let me read a little bit of this one. Slowly, slightly, faith is trickling back, at least into Britain. There's something in the water. Religion is civilized table talk. Even non-believers mourn the death of Pope Francis, with secularism yet to devise a credible alternative as the world's moral conscience. The pews are filling up, notably with young people. Gen Z's attendance at church has quadrupled in recent years, which I didn't know that it was that high. That's pretty incredible. From a small base, but the significance lies more in the direction of travel. This is shaping up to be the first new generation in a very long time to be making the country more, not less religious. TikToking digital natives for whom the old world is unfathomable, yet who retrieve now from its analog wreckage of all things, Bibles and hymn sheets. Today's culture is certainly more sympathetic to faith than the noughties when millennials like me grew up ensnared by the four horsemen of new atheism in their era-defining bestsellers, which was Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett. Dismissing religion as child abuse, mental illness, or terrorist propaganda, they seem now as dated as the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then it goes, it's an interesting article. So it's another article noting correctly that there is a real revival of religious conviction in our culture, not just our culture, but across the West. It's a real thing. We can officially say that now. I think people were noting this initially, cautiously optimistic, but not sure. Is this some sort of blip? Is this some sort of anomaly? What's going on here? You notice this anecdotally. A lot of us noticed this anecdotally for a while, that when you go to churches, especially more conservative, reverent churches, that you walk in and, wow, there's a lot of young people in this church. And that's something that we've been noting for a long time anecdotally, but now there's a lot of data to back this up. So we can officially say it's not a fluke that Gen Z is the first generation in many years to be probably more religious than their parents. And now Gen Z is still in the majority not religious, but the trend lines are pointing in the right direction for the first time in many decades, and that's pretty extraordinary and heartening. Now, the big question, of course, is why this is happening. And, well, the real answer is that the Lord is working in the hearts of the younger generation and leading them back home, back to the truth. And I mean, that's what's actually happening. Jesus is happening. But on a psychological level, what's going on? And I think it's a deep yet simple truth, which is that human beings need, and the article kind of touches on this, which is that human beings need, not want, not just desire, they need meaning in their lives. Human beings need meaning in their lives. This is what's happening with Gen Z. They're searching for meaning. They can't live without meaning. And you cannot have a society that exists without meaning for very long. A society without meaning will either collapse and be destroyed, or it will be revived and it will rediscover meaning. What can't happen is that it just kind of lingers on indefinitely in this haze, in this zombie state without meaning. That just can't be sustained. So it's got to head one direction or another. And human existence without God, without faith, without religion is an existence without meaning, without purpose. There's just no way around that. There's no way around it. This is why the article mentions the four horsemen of atheism, new atheism, right? And this was in the 90s and the early 2000s. There was a big surge of atheism, and you had Christopher Hitchens and Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins and those guys, Sam Harris. And they were very popular and they sold a lot of books. But they ultimately failed. And why did they fail? Well, it's because they never solved this problem. which is the most important one, which is, okay, where's the meaning in it? And atheists for centuries have been trying to find a way around this, right? They've been trying to devise all kinds of philosophies, all kinds of existential conceptions of life and existence that would imbue life with meaning and purpose without God, but it always fails. And I've read at least the most famous, anti-God book from each of those four guys. And I read all four books, and it's repetitive after a while, or redundant. They all make kind of the same points. But this is the area where they all failed, and most of them attempted to deal with this at least a little bit. They make all their same points, but then you get to the point of, okay, why does life matter then? Like, if you're right, why does life matter? What's the point of life? What's the point of any of this? Who cares? Why should we? It always fails, because the stark reality is that if there's no God, then our existence is an accident. We were formed by blind chance, and we will soon be obliterated into nothingness. That's our fate. It's the fate of everyone we know and love. The fate of the entire world, the fate of the earth itself is nothingness. And you can't escape that without God. You just can't escape it. And this is the thing the atheists have they've never been able to grapple with it. They've never been able to find a way around it. They've never been able to come up with a coherent and believable and powerful argument for why life can have meaning in a world without God. Now, there have been some atheists who have basically admitted that, but when they admit it, it gets pretty stark and depressing pretty fast. In fact, I remember years ago, I read an essay by a philosopher that very few people have ever read or ever even heard of, because he's very obscure, a Norwegian philosopher from like the 20s or 30s. And I think he only had one essay that was translated in English. It was called The Last Messiah. And the guy's name was Peter Wessel Zapfa, I believe. I think I have the name right. And anyway, Zapfa was an atheist, and he was like a pessimist and a nihilist. But he was honest, at least. And he thought that in a world without God, which is the world that he thought we lived in, life just had no meaning. And not only did it not have meaning, but life is therefore a curse. It's an enormous error. It's a kind of cosmic joke. And he thought that human consciousness in particular was an accident of evolution. That was the only way he could sort of figure out, like, why are we conscious? Why does life exist? Why are we conscious without God? And he came to the conclusion, well, if there's no God, then consciousness is a product of evolution, because that's all that it can be. But why would nature evolve consciousness of all things? Why would we evolve an understanding of our own meaninglessness and of the nothingness of our lives? Like, why? How could that be an evolutionary adaptation? And his answer was, well, it's like a horrible accident. It's like a mutation, basically. It wasn't supposed to happen. And he compared it to like a species of deer where the horns grow too big. And so the deer has to chip off bits of their horns. Otherwise, the horns become so heavy that they'd be pinned to the ground by the horns. And so he kind of compares that to, that's what's happening with human beings, that we have our consciousness, and we're sort of, in effect, metaphorically pinned to the ground by this enormous weight of our consciousness and our own awareness of the meaninglessness of our lives. Anyway, I stumbled across this essay, and I don't remember how exactly, but I found it actually quite profound and powerful as an argument for God, which is definitely not how it was intended, but it really just shows you that this is the other option. Either there is a God, or we are walking accidents. Our lives are a curse. Our consciousness is a cosmic joke. And all we can do is just distract ourselves until we fade back into nothingness. That's the only other option. That's it. Those are your two choices. And I think that's become clear to a lot of people. I think that's why they're fleeing back to faith. Now, granted, just because existence without God is a horror beyond comprehension, which it would be, that in and of itself doesn't mean that that is not in and of itself proof of God. In other words, the fact that a godless universe is terrible doesn't mean in and of itself that we don't live in a godless universe. Because, well, you could say, well, maybe the truth is just, maybe that it is terrible, but maybe we just live, maybe our lives, maybe that's it. Maybe our lives are terrible, terrible things happen. But I think the point is that we all innately recognize that that isn't the case. We have an inherent recognition of the fact that life has meaning, that existence has meaning. We see that existence without God is not only a great horror, but also an absurdity. It's an absurd concept. It's almost like a contradiction in terms. Our existence, therefore, testifies to God's existence. And I think people are seeing that. Gen Z is seeing that. And our consciousness is also a testimony to God's existence. And I think actually that's how I stumbled across this essay, because I was interested in how atheists deal with and explain consciousness. Because to me, of all the kind of rational arguments for God's existence, the best one is not the origins of life or the fine-tuning of the universe, although those are both good arguments. But to me personally, I've always thought the best one is consciousness, the fact of human consciousness. Consciousness is itself proof of a transcendent, immaterial realm of existence. Consciousness, I think, is proof of the supernatural, I would argue, because otherwise, how is it possible that inanimate matter in a blind and dumb universe could have somehow become aware of itself? I mean, it just makes no sense. And as we said, it makes no sense. Then you would have to argue that it's some sort of blind, dumb evolutionary adaptation, and it makes even less sense in that version of events. And then you're left with what this guy was saying in his essay, which is that it never should have happened, but it did, and it's a mistake. Like something went horribly wrong, and now we have consciousness and the capacity for love and self-awareness. All of that never should have happened. It's all a terrible thing. So that's like the honest atheist answer to the problem of consciousness. Although it's not really an answer at all, because it still doesn't explain how that would be possible. How could that be? How could you have inanimate matter that accidentally assembles itself in such a way as to trigger an awareness of itself? To me, that just makes no sense at all, and is an extremely compelling argument for God. And so I think, some of this, now I'm off in the weeds, but I think what it ultimately comes back to is meaning, and a lot of Gen Z, they were born into a culture where there was no sense of meaning, and they are rebelling against that, as well they should. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.